Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Is it on? Is it working? Huh? No, not working? Hello, hello, Om Mani Padme Hum. Is it working? 1 second. Okay. I'll just talk as loud as I can. Can you hear me? Can you understand? No? Not yet. Okay, we'll wait. Technical problems, they always happen. Hello. And if you still have trouble, there are these, I think, headphones you can use. Yeah, it's a bit too loud, maybe. Okay, so welcome and thank you for coming in spite of the rain. But that's part of life in Washington, isn't it? So, okay, so during these monthly Sharing the Dharma days, Venerable Chodron has been reading from and discussing parts of one of her books called Working with Anger. I think this is quite a relevant topic for all of us. And last month, in the Sharing Dharma Day, she talked about chapter 4 of that book, which explores the question, is anger useful? And at the end of that chapter, there's a section on forgiveness. And I thought to begin today's event with a meditation on forgiveness. And I was thinking that, you know, if we hold on to anger and grudges against people, you know, it never really feels good, I think. But especially at this time of the year, because we have these holidays coming up. We have Thanksgiving, then Christmas and New Year's, and these are times when people get together with family and friends, acquaintances, and the idea is to celebrate, you know, to have a good time. And if we're at these events, then we're feeling angry at somebody or holding a grudge against somebody, you know, it's very unpleasant, very uncomfortable. And it can also affect the whole atmosphere, the whole celebration, and even ruin the whole thing. So I think that learning how to forgive is always a good thing to do, but especially now at this time of the year. And there's a really nice meditation on forgiveness that I first encountered many years ago in a book called A Path with Heart by Jack Kornfield. And so I'll use that today. I'll use a somewhat amended version of that meditation. And before we begin, just to remind you of something that is in the book, Working with Anger, when it's talking about forgiveness there. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning harmful actions. So it doesn't mean somebody does something harmful to you or anyone else. Forgiving them means saying, oh, it's completely okay, you know, as if you're pretending nothing wrong ever happened, right? It doesn't mean that. So in our tradition, one of the ways we develop forgiveness is by making a mental separation of the person who did that harmful action and their harmful action. So we kind of separate those in our mind. And then, and we acknowledge that the person isn't 100% bad. You know, they're not always doing harmful actions. You know, they have some good qualities and they do some good things. So we're acknowledging that, not ignoring that. And then we can extend, well, we work on, it takes time usually, but we learn to forgive them. And it's even possible to go further than that and feel compassion and kindness towards them. Well, while at the same time maintaining that the harmful actions they did were wrong, were harmful. So we're not condoning those. And we do anything we can to try to stop that harmful behavior. But we do it without anger. and hatred and judgmentalness. So that's the ideal to work towards. Okay, so first of all, we'll start with some prayers that will be up on the screen. You can follow as you wish. Then we'll do some silent meditation for about 5 or 10 minutes to help our minds settle down. Then I will guide this meditation on forgiveness.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
That's it.
May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger.
So that prayer we just recited is called a prayer of the 4 immeasurables. And the 4 immeasurables are love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. We try to develop those states of mind towards other beings, all beings without exception. It's hard, but it can be done gradually. So see if you can, feel how wonderful it would be if all people and all beings everywhere could be happy and free of suffering. And feel the wish that by what we're doing here today, we can make a contribution towards that. Okay, so check your position, your sitting position, and it's important to be comfortable when we're doing meditation. So try to find a comfortable position. But whether you're sitting on the floor or on a chair, it's good if you can keep your back straight, because that helps the mind to be more clear, concentrated, and awake. But while keeping the back straight, it's also good to be as relaxed as possible and not tight or tense. If you do notice any tension anywhere in your body, see if you can let go of it, release it. And one fairly easy way to be more relaxed and let go of tension is by taking a few deep breaths. As you breathe in slowly, deeply, as much as you can before it gets uncomfortable, pause for a moment And then exhale slowly. Let your breath go out slowly. And you can imagine if there is any tension in your body, it goes out with the breath. But don't worry about it becoming a problem for anyone else. You can imagine it just disappearing in space. So do that for 3 breaths, long and slow breaths, and then just resume a normal rate of breathing. So now, focus your attention or your awareness on your breathing, just allowing the breath to flow naturally. Don't try to change or control the breath in any way. Just let your body breathe as it normally does. And with your mind, your awareness, just lightly observe the breath as it's coming in and going out, one breath after another. Try not to let the mind wander away from the breath, although it probably will. That's normal. So you might hear a sound that distracts you, or a thought will pop up in your mind, something that happened earlier today, or some plans you have for later today, tonight, tomorrow. So our mind is often busy thinking about the past or the future or other places or all kinds of things. So it's hard to stop that, but we can learn to ignore thoughts, put them aside, and then return our attention to an object like the breathing. So try to do that. Whenever your mind wanders away from the breath, just let go of that other thought or whatever distraction it may be. Let it go, put it aside, and bring your attention back to your breathing. And don't worry if you have to keep doing that again and again. It's fine. That's how we learn to meditate, to practice cultivating concentration. So we'll now move into the more reflective part of the meditation. But while doing this, still try to keep your attention on what we're doing here. And if your mind gets distracted to something else not related to what we're doing here, then let go of that other thought and bring your mind back to this meditation. So, even if we want to generate forgiveness, it can be difficult to do so, especially if we've been really deeply hurt by someone. Sometimes we may even feel that we don't want to forgive, that they don't deserve forgiveness. But it can help to recognize how painful it is to hang on to blame, anger, and hatred. So, do you think you can be truly happy if you're holding anger in your heart, closing your heart to someone? Imagine what it would be like if you could let go of that anger and experience the peace of forgiveness. So there are several steps in this meditation. The first one is to forgive ourselves for things that we have done that we feel bad about, that we know were wrong. So sometimes it's easier to forgive others than to forgive ourselves. We sometimes hold grudges against ourselves and blame ourselves and feel guilty. But let's give that a try. So allow memories and images and emotions about things that you have done, things you have said, things you have thought that you feel bad about and you haven't forgiven yourself for. So just allow those to arise in your mind. And see if you can understand that those things you feel bad about are not permanent, inherent qualities of you, but rather temporary, transitory aspects of yourself that come and go. And you're not always like that. You're not always behaving that way. You can bring to mind times when you behaved in the opposite way. You did things that were positive and beneficial instead of negative and harmful. also, there are causes and conditions that led us to behave in those negative ways. And we don't always have control over what kind of causes and conditions we find ourselves in. And we can gradually learn to cultivate the causes and conditions so that we stop those harmful ways of behaving and can behave in ways that are more positive, beneficial, constructive. So there's room for change. There's always the possibility of learning and growing and changing. So with those thoughts in mind, let's see if we can generate forgiveness for ourselves. So there's some words or phrases that you can say to yourself, repeat to yourself, to try to generate the feeling of forgiveness. So from your heart, say to yourself, I forgive myself for whatever I have done in the past, intentionally or unintentionally. My actions, words, and thoughts. I have suffered enough. I have learned and grown. And I'm ready now to open my heart to myself. May I be happy. May I be free from confusion and mental afflictions. May I know the joy of truly understanding myself, others, and the world. May I come to know my own wholeness and fullness and help others to do the same. So you may not be able to actually feel the meaning behind those words, to feel forgiveness for yourself, but that's okay. It's good enough right now to just say these words to yourself and try to forgive yourself. And gradually, you will learn to do that. And then the next step in the meditation is to forgive someone else. Someone you love who has hurt you in some way. So imagine such a person in the space in front of you. And from your heart to their heart, directly communicate the following. With all my heart, I forgive you for whatever you may have done, intentionally or unintentionally. By your actions, your words, or your thoughts that have caused me pain. I forgive you. And if you find it helpful, you can remember what we thought about earlier, that that person isn't always 100% of the time behaving in those ways. I have a lot of good qualities and do a lot of good things. And then ask the other person to forgive you for whatever you have done, intentionally or unintentionally, by your actions, your words, your thoughts. So ask for forgiveness from the other person. And again, if it's difficult to really feel the meaning behind those words, that's okay. Just trying to do that is good enough. Just saying those words to yourself is good enough right now. And then wish that both yourself and the other person to be happy, free, and joyful. May we both open our hearts and minds to feel love and understanding for each other as we grow into wholeness. Imagine that the message has been received and accepted, and affirm the healing that has taken place within you and between you and the other person. And then allow the image to melt into space. And then the final step is to extend forgiveness to other people. So think about some of the people toward whom you have closed your heart. Remember how you felt and what you did when people abused you, spoke harshly, took your parking place, pushed in front of you in a line, and so on. Consider how many people you have hurt in some way by your own conscious or unconscious actions, words, and thoughts. How many times have you been the abuser, the one who pushed in, the one who spoke harshly? Imagine all those people in front of you, and imagine saying to them, I forgive you, and I ask you to forgive me for whatever I have done, intentionally or unintentionally, that has hurt you. May you and I and all of us create the causes for happiness in our lives. May we all come to know the joy of truly understanding and experiencing our interconnectedness, our interdependence. May we open our hearts and minds to each other and meet in harmony. So as a conclusion to the meditation, try to feel as clearly and wholeheartedly as you can that you have actually released all guilt about your own actions and all anger and blame toward others for their actions. You just imagine the guilt, the anger, the blame just dissolving, disappearing in space. And in this moment, allow yourself to feel forgiveness and a patient acceptance of all those actions that happened in the past. So now let's make a mental dedication of the positive energy or merit from doing this meditation, that it will bring peace and happiness to all living beings everywhere and help them get in touch with their good nature, their natural qualities of love, compassion, wisdom, and forgiveness. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. Everyone, please rise as Venerable Khadro leaves the hall. So we'll now have a 15-minute break. Please be back here a couple minutes before 12 Abbey time for Venerable Chodron's talk. In the meantime, you're welcome to stay in this room and meditate, reflect. We'll keep this space a quiet space. If you want to go into the Tara room, we have the 21 Taras displayed that will soon go up onto the walls, so you can check that out. There's also the Posada room, the dedication room, and you're welcome to go around. And so we'll see you back here shortly. Thank you.
Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha Tayata 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 Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha.
So, welcome everybody. A month ago, at our previous Sharing the Dharma Day, we hadn't planned on having one today, and because it's winter and it's raining and nobody's gonna come because it's right before Thanksgiving. And look how many people are here. Amazing. Congratulations. Thank you all. Yeah. Okay, so I know you just all were so interested in working with your anger, or rather poking the person next to you and telling them to work with their anger. Yes, they really should, shouldn't they? Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to have a couple of minutes of silence. I know you just did some meditation, but a few minutes of silence never hurts. Then a short motivation, and then we'll get into the talk. And we've been going through this book, Working with Anger, since the beginning of the year. Yeah. So we've made it to chapter 5. Not very far. But I think people have gotten something out of it. Yeah. Making us think not about other people's anger, which we always think about, and how wrong and, they misunderstand things. They make mountains out of molehills, how they should just calm down and let things go. We all know about that. What we don't know about is those same things in ourselves. Yeah. And so that's why we usually handle unpleasant situations by pointing the finger. Yeah. So-and-so made me angry. They did it to me. Yeah, how dare they? And this is displayed immaculately by the people in government during the shutdown. Yeah. Did you notice how nobody said, oh, we made some mistakes? Everybody said, yeah, somebody else is stubborn. Yeah. And as a result, when you dig in your heels and you say, I'm not going to let up because it's their fault, the shutdown was the longest one in U.S. history. Congratulations, we have a new Guinness World Record. So, working with anger is designed to help us check inside and see what we can do to ease the situation and to let go of, to shed our own incorrect interpretations and self-centered demands. Yeah. Okay, let's just have a couple minutes of silence, and then we'll get into the talk. And then to generate our motivation, let's recall how damaging anger can be, especially when we hold on to it very tightly, when we vow never to let it go because of the injustice we experienced. And instead, change our attitude to one of curiosity about how anger functions in our own minds and in our own lives, and have that supported by our wish for peace and harmony, not only in our relationships, but in our society, among groups of people, and so on. And as we are able to release our anger, not repress it, but release it, then it's so much easier to have compassion and be open-minded, and then be able to use our talents and abilities to make a positive contribution to society, and to all living beings. So let's have that be our long-term motivation. Okay, so we're in chapter 5. I'll read a little bit and then comment. Can everybody hear me okay? It's loud enough if I talk at this volume? Okay. So sometimes our anger seems to come out of nowhere and we explode quickly. Yeah? In your experience? Other times, we feel that anger is lurking under the surface in some repressed form that influences our life. How can we learn to recognize when we're angry? Because we can't do anything with our anger unless we can recognize that we're angry. How do we do that? And then what factors make it arise? It's not the external situation, is an external condition. But anger arises because we have the seed of anger inside of ourselves. Anger arises because of the way we interpret different things. Yeah, and the lens through which we interpret everything is me, I, my, and mine. So everything concerning me, I, my, and mine, I want what's good and pleasurable for it. I want to protect it. And whatever I see as challenging or questioning or damaging me, something to do with me, I, my, and mine, I get upset. I'm angry. Yeah. Okay. So how can we learn to recognize our anger, and how can we see what factors cause it so that we could do something about that? Because the whole point is, and Shanti Deva makes this point so exquisitely in his book on engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds, that he gives the example of covering the whole earth in tar so that we don't step on thorns. Yeah, so you can either cover the whole earth in tar, or you can put on a pair of shoes. Yeah, which is going to work better? Which is easier? Yeah, so in the same way, we can continue to blame everybody and everything external to us, or work with our own self-centered mind and how it conceives and interprets events in a wrong way such that we get angry? Yeah. So the answers to these questions will help us to be aware of and understand our anger, which in turn will facilitate transforming it through practicing fortitude or patience. Okay, so I don't like the term patience because it implies waiting for somebody to do something, but fortitude implies building up some internal strength. Yeah. Okay, so the first subsection says recognizing we're angry. Before we can transform or eliminate our anger, we must be able to identify it. Well, sometimes our anger is self-evident. Yeah, we're exploding, we're hysterical, we're screaming, we're crying, we shut down and don't talk to anybody. Okay, so sometimes our anger is evident. Other times we don't recognize that we're annoyed, irritated, hostile, or belligerent until these emotions get stronger, and then we are speaking or acting aggressively. Yeah. So this may happen for a variety of reasons. For example, we may be distracted by the external environment and out of touch with our own feelings. We're so busy in doing something, planning something, arranging something, that we don't notice that we're getting irritated and aggravated. Yeah. Or we may deny our anger because we think it's bad. We've been told when we were kids, oh, don't be angry, it's bad, or you can't be angry. Yeah, I think with women that has been the message more than with men. With men, it's like, go throw sand in their eyes. Yeah, go beat them up, stick up for yourself. With women, it's be sweet, be nice. Okay, so these are broad generalizations, but see if the shoe fits. Okay, or we don't recognize our anger because we know something's the matter, but we don't know what it is. Our stomach feels a little weird. Yeah, we can feel we're on edge, but why? We don't know. So for some people, recognizing and labeling their anger takes training and practice, and there are several ways to identify it. For example, when you do the breathing meditation, we can observe what distractions arise that take us away from the object of meditation. You're trying to focus on the breath, the mind starts thinking of something else. What are we thinking about? Are we thinking about something that's going to bring us pleasure? Or are we thinking about something that happened earlier that we feel really irritated and annoyed with? Yeah, so it's interesting to see what just arises in the mind. Same thing when you're driving to work or riding the bus or the subway to work. What are you thinking about? Yeah, besides doing a critique of what everybody else looks like and what they must be and what they're wearing and so on. What's coming up in our mind? Are we even aware of it? Okay. So to start to become aware of those things, we may recognize when you're breathing just a general feeling of restlessness or anger, or we may remember a situation from years ago about which we are still irritated. That happened to anybody? Yeah, you haven't thought, well, some situations you're really mad at. You think about them every day. Okay, some situation you may not even remember, for a long time, and then suddenly, boom, yeah. When I was doing a 3-month Vajrasattva retreat, keeping silence, I was in my early 20s or mid-20s at this point. All of a sudden, I remembered in 2nd grade that my teacher wouldn't let me be in the class play. And I got furious, Now, how long had that anger been sitting there as some kind of seed? How often do you think about your 2nd grade teacher? I don't think very often, at least I didn't. But all of a sudden, I'm doing purification, boing! Yeah. So it's interesting how that happens. Yeah, I didn't even realize I was still mad at her. Okay. So we check check our thoughts that are coming up, especially if you're doing breathing meditation, see what distracts you. And then by becoming aware of the emotional tone and the flavor, I call it, of various emotions that are subsumed under anger, we can learn to identify and label these different types of anger. Yeah. In some languages, they don't have a lot of words for anger, We have a lot of them in English. Yeah. Starts annoyance, irritation, frustration, spite, jealousy, anger, resentment, rage, belligerence, spite, yeah, and more. That's just a few of them, okay? Of course, we may have many positive emotions, such as equanimity, love, compassion, and joy, but they don't turn up and these feelings, positive feelings towards others, don't turn up as much as angry distractions do. For some people. For other people, the actual feelings of love, compassion don't turn up, but what distracts us is seeking pleasure. Or you love somebody, in quotations, yeah, which in Buddhist language means that we have, that kind of romantic love that they talk about on the radio and in the movies. We would call that attachment rather than love. Yeah. Okay. Another way to identify anger is to note our physical sensations. For example, if our stomach tightens, our jaws clench, heat surges in our body, our heart starts beating faster. Yeah, that could be a clue to us that we're getting angry. Yeah, there's so many different ways in which people work and what they can point out to identify emotions. Yeah. I remember one time I was staying somewhere in a hotel, going from one venue to another, to give some Dharma talks. And I seldom watch TV, but I turned on the TV. And who was speaking? It was one of the old favorite preachers. I don't know if it was, I can't remember their names, but the big guys, yeah. And this guy was preaching, and you're going to hell for being a sinner. And, then you know, the goblins are going to eat you and you're condemned for hell for awful. And this guy believed it, and he was trying to make whoever was watching him believe it. And I was looking at him, and his face was red, and his arteries in his neck were bulging. I mean, this guy was furious. So I'm not sure what he was furious at, but it made me really see, oh yeah, this is a good way to detect anger, you know. Heat, yeah, quickened pulse, and gestures. I mean, he was like, you're going to hell. I can't do it as good as him, but, you know, maybe you've seen them. Yeah. So each person has different physical manifestations of anger, and we need to observe and note what ours are. Doing this is helpful, for sometimes it's easier to identify the physical sensation accompanying anger than the actual anger itself, when we identify the physical situation. Yeah. So I know for me, when anger is arising, there's a certain uneasy feeling in my stomach. And just in general, yeah. And sometimes I don't know what it is that's bugging me. Sometimes I know exactly what it is. But it's an interesting sensation, you know, that lets me know, okay, there's something here I need to look at. Yeah. Okay. So, you know, it's really good to get to know yourself and see the physical clues to anger arising. A further way to identify anger is to observe our moods. When we're in a bad mood, we can pause and ask ourselves, what is this feeling? What happened to prompt it? Yeah. So a bad mood, at least from my exploration, inner explanation, there's some kind of anger there. You know, I didn't get what I want. People aren't doing what I think they should do. Yeah. And so I'm in a bad mood. The people may not have said anything to me. Yeah. It can be just how I interpret what's going on. Or sometimes you watch the news and you hear what it is, and your mood goes, psh, yeah. Okay. So what is this feeling and what has prompted it? Sometimes we can observe patterns in our moods and behavior, and observing patterns are incredibly helpful. Yeah, because when there's a pattern in our mood or a pattern with the kind of situations we get annoyed with, whatever it is, yeah, or the pattern of the type of communication involved, yeah, if we see patterns that are making us have a foul mood or, you know, causing anger to arise, then that's a really good thing to notice. That gives us a lot of information. Okay, so these can give us clues as to how our minds operate and to what our anger sticks. Yeah. Are we more upset about world affairs or about the neighbor or about the person you're living with or with your dog? Yeah. Or with the government? You know, who is it? Yeah. And what kind of situation is it? Yeah. For example, Mark noticed that he is in a bad mood almost every morning when he wakes up. Yeah. Anybody in a bad mood often in the morning? Yeah. So why are you in a bad mood in the morning? Yeah. You wake up alive. There's some story going on, you know, of I want this or I don't want that. See if you can, you know, figure out what it is. Or maybe it's our own laziness. I'm angry because I want a cup of tea and I want it to drop from the sky. I don't want to have to get up and exert so much energy in the morning making myself a cup of tea. You know, so I'm annoyed about that. Okay. Okay, so Mark noticed that he's in a bad mood. So knowing this, he informed his roommates, and instead of engaging with people right away in the morning, he does his meditation practice. Breathing meditation allows his bad mood to dissipate, and if he is angry about a specific situation, then he works with anger in one of the ways that we will discuss in the rest of the book. Okay, next topic is repressed anger. Yeah, so we all hear about repressed anger, and you know, you've been traumatized as a child, and you're holding anger, and you don't even know it. Yeah. I was once at a talk by Stephen Levine. You know, he did a lot of things about death and so on. And there was one young man who stood up in the Q&A period. And this young man, you know, stood and he clenched his fist and he said, "I'm angry. My therapist told me that I should be angry because of what happened to me when I was a kid." And it was so evident to me anyway, that by his gesture, by his voice, he was trying to be angry because the therapist said he should be angry. Yeah, because you know how you can tell if it's fake anger or real anger. Yeah, can you tell? Some people, yes, some people look puzzled. Yeah. Sometimes when you look at the pictures, when they're advertising movies, yeah, and they'll show pictures of the characters, yeah, usually in the heat of some strong emotion, because that's going to get you to watch the movie. And it's interesting, there's ways in which, at least for me, I can see that it's an actor, it's not a real person who's angry. Yeah, there's certain, I haven't fully identified what it is, but you know, there's something. Yeah. And especially if somebody else is telling you you should be angry, well, we want to please other people by being angry, huh? Now, you know, so I think this young man was more confused. Maybe he wasn't angry. Maybe it was something else. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So some people in therapy speak about repressed anger, meaning they still resent something from the past, but are not aware that they are angry. In therapy, a client may need to tap into and initially express anger in a safe situation with the therapist. This is if it's genuine anger. By acknowledging the anger, they can then proceed to apply the antidotes to it. However, when trying to get in touch with anger, a person must take care not to fuel the anger or to create anger that wasn't there. Yeah? Like you tell a story about something that happened, and then your friend goes, "Boy, you must have been furious." And it's like, oh, well, no, but maybe I am and it's repressed. Usually that would come out. Or, maybe I just wasn't angry, or maybe I let it go. In which case, you don't need to bring it up again. So the people in the Abbey know about my anger stories. I've told them repeatedly. Yeah. Do you sense that I'm getting angry when I talk about them? No. Okay. Because I've dealt with whatever the situation was. Okay. So I remember a young man at a workshop trying to speak in an angry tone because his therapist had suggested he might have repressed anger. So that was the story I just told you. Although he was trying to clench his fists and scowl, it was apparent that he wasn't really angry. Rather, he was trying to feel something that he thought he should feel, given what had happened to him, and given what his therapist thought he should feel. Okay, be wary of the word should. Yeah. Should, I don't know. I use that word sometimes. But sometimes it's just not a good word. Yeah. It makes us think that we should think or act in a way that is not really according to how we're feeling or even fits the situation. Okay. Rather, he was trying to feel something that he thought he should feel, given what had happened to him. I believe he would have benefited from relaxing his mind and simply observing what he did feel instead of assuming that he had anger that he couldn't feel. Yeah. Some people speak of repressed anger as if they thought they were angry all the time but did not know it. Yeah. They have the image of anger being actively present in them under the surface all the time, ready to explode outward. Such a self-image can be harmful, for then they believe their anger is an inseparable part of who they are, and they stop trusting themselves. Yeah. They just feel, I have repressed anger. I like going around all the time in a bad mood. But I don't think, according to Buddhist psychology, when we talk about the different mental factors such as anger, there's the seed of anger, and then there's manifest anger. So the seed of anger means, like right now, hopefully nobody's angry. We're all sitting here calmly. Yeah. But we still have the seed of anger in our mind stream. because given certain circumstances, that seed can grow into manifest anger. Yeah. But it doesn't mean, having the seed of anger doesn't mean that all the time, every day, there's anger going on inside of you at some level. Yeah. Okay. So, it was very interesting. We had a young adult program a couple of years ago, and the students were asking about anger and things like this. And what came out is they were all talking about being traumatized. Yeah. And it was really puzzling for me, because for me, the word trauma indicates something really severe. Yeah, you were in a war, or you were a POW, or you were just beaten to a pulp, when you were disciplined as a child, or some really serious, thing. And when I asked the kids, because they were all just they seemed like normal young adults to me, I asked, well, who, among you has been traumatized? And they look around, it's like, we all have. What? And what they defined as trauma was not how I use the word. For them, trauma means some small thing happened when you were a kid that you didn't like. Yeah, like all the times you got blamed for something that wasn't your fault. Yeah, just the things that they were citing, saying that they were traumatized, to me, it just didn't seem very traumatic at all. Yeah. And so it made me think kind of what is going on in the modern idea of therapy, and especially in self-help things, and especially when we all think that we are miniature therapists and can diagnose what's wrong with everybody else. Yeah. So talking about, but I think in many ways people are very resilient, even in the face of what I see as actual trauma. Not, what these people were defining as trauma. And I've seen that kind of resilience. My teachers are Tibetans, and they were all became exiles in 1959 in their youth when they had to flee Tibet. And, that, when they tell stories about fleeing Tibet with the Chinese communists chasing them and throwing bombs and shooting at them when they're trying to go across the Himalayas without very good shoes and equipment. To me, that's how I would say is traumatic. But they're happy people now. Yeah. So people can be very resilient. Yeah. There was one Tibetan refugee, a monk, Pelden, what was his name? What? Pelden Gyatso. Okay. So he wrote a book about his experience. He was a monk, And then when the abortive uprising happened in March of 1959 in Tibet against the communist Chinese, you know, after that, they just flooded the monasteries. They kicked people out of the monasteries. They imprisoned them. So he was just a monk trying to create virtue, and he was arrested for doing nothing wrong and imprisoned for a number of years. I can't remember how many, 15, 20. It was a long time. And Chinese communist prisons were not beautiful, okay? And when he got out, he then fled into India to see the Dalai Lama. And then he started going to different countries to talk about his experience so that people would know about what happened in Tibet and would work for Tibetan freedom. So he was in Seattle when I lived there, and I bumped into him somewhere. He was leaving the next day, and I said, please come speak to our Dharma group. So I think a few of you were there. And he came it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, to speak to the Dharma group. And he told his story. He wasn't angry. He just told his story. And after that, and people asked questions and so on. Then I went to cook breakfast because we were offering him breakfast after the talk. And in there was a little corner, where we ate, and on the one of the walls of the corner, there was a picture of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And when I walked in the middle of cooking, I walked into that room, and Peldon Gyatso was just looking at that picture of His Holiness. Just like that, kind of completely open with full devotion. And I said to myself, that's why he is a happy individual now. Because, his faith in Buddhism, in the Buddha, in the Dalai Lama, that sustained him through all the beatings and everything else he experienced in prison. It's amazing. And I read the story of His Holiness's doctor in Tibet, who likewise had been imprisoned when the communist Chinese took over. And he was telling the story that as in other parts of China, there was massive starvation after the communist Chinese took over. And he told the story of having to go out every morning and look in the feces of either animals or other inmates and picking out grains of food that may not have been digested and eating those to stay alive. That I would call trauma, being in that kind of situation. And yet, he also was a happy individual. When he was freed, he, at that time, came to India, started working in the Tibetan Medical Institute, served many people. And he wasn't angry, he wasn't depressed. So we can see examples of this, of how resilient human beings can be, yeah? When we can guide our mind in the right direction. Yeah. But my point here is, when little things happen and we label little things that were simply unpleasant as, or normal, it happens to a lot of people, we label those things trauma. As soon as we give it the name trauma, our attitude towards it changes. And then we feel really traumatized. What happened? How am I ever going to recover from this? Yeah. But if it's not labeled trauma, then we have a different attitude towards it. And I think healing comes more readily. Yeah. I mean, I look back at things that happened to me when I was young, and some people might call those traumatic. But compared to what other people have experienced, I don't call those things traumatic. Yeah. My mother got cancer when I was 10 years old, and she thought she was going to die. Yeah. When I look back on that experience, I didn't fully understand what was going on. Yeah. But when you're a kid, when mom's sick, or dad's sick, it makes a difference in how you feel. Yeah. But there's so many other things that can happen in our life that change how we are looking at something. Okay, let's go back to the book here. Okay, so what makes anger arise? The deepest cause of anger is our ignorance misconceiving reality. In addition to this, other factors contribute to our being angry at any particular moment. These include the seed of anger in our mind stream, which I just spoke about, our habit of getting angry. Yeah, every time somebody doesn't say good morning to me, I feel rejected and, annoyed and left out. Yeah, so we have a habit of getting angry. Whenever your printer doesn't work, whenever the computer erases what you just typed or doesn't save it properly. Yeah. Anybody get angry at that besides me? Yeah. So I call them modern inconveniences, which are also convenient sometimes. But, okay. But why am I getting angry? It's a machine. Yeah. Well, the people who program the machine, they're from whatever company you decide you don't like. So everything that they designed is wrong, is bad. Of course it doesn't work. Why didn't you get this other kind of computer? Yeah, okay. Habit of anger. Yeah. Okay, so seed of anger, habit of anger. The inappropriate attention that projects negativity. Oh, yeah. I had a friend, he worked at a public radio station in Seattle years ago. And there was another person that worked in the office who never said hello to them, to my friend, So Peter never said hello to the other guy. So they're working in the same office. They just walk past each other. So Peter is talking to me about it, and he says, I don't know what's going on, but this guy doesn't like me. Yeah, maybe he doesn't like the pieces I do, that are aired on the radio. Maybe he doesn't like this, but I'm sure, he doesn't like me because he just doesn't even say hello when we walk past each other. Well, one day, fast forward, one day, the guy stopped him and said, that piece that you just put in that just aired, that was fantastic. Peter's going, what? And they start talking, and it turns out that the whole time the other guy has admired Peter's work, but Peter had the inappropriate attention that projects negativity, so that every time this guy didn't say hello, his mind said, he's angry at me. And it's unfair that he's angry at me, because I don't know why. When that wasn't the situation at all. Okay? So how many times, do we just project something, think, because we all can read other people's minds, right? Yeah, we know that they don't like us. We know they're trying to get our goat. We know they're trying to hurt our feelings, right? Yeah, we know they haven't said anything. Yeah, but we know. Okay? And then we go a step further and we psychologically diagnose them, even though we know nothing and are not qualified to do that. But that doesn't matter. We know the terms. That guy just drives me crazy. He's what is it? He's bipolar. Yeah. Or he's, I've forgotten all the ones. What? What? I don't have my hearing aids in. Yeah, get annoyed at me.
Oppositional defiant.
Oh, oppositional defiance, yes. That is code for a normal kid. Yeah. It's a kid who, has things going on at home and doesn't know how to handle them and needs an adult to show some compassion and some empathy. But we say oppositional defiance. You can tell she was a teacher. Okay. So, we have all these terms that we impute on other people. And then we're sure that, that we can read their mind and we know that they are trying to make us mad. Yeah. Yeah. And then somebody comes and apologizes to us for something they said, and they said, this just recently happened to me, in an email exchange. I was calling something into question, that somebody said. And, and then he explained what he said. And it was like that. Well, yeah, then fine. Yeah. I trusted the person well enough to know that he didn't mean anything harmful. Yeah. But so often, our habitual mind says they mean to harm me. And that's a painful mind to have, because we're seeing enemies all over the place. Okay. So it includes the seed of anger in our mind stream, our habit of getting angry, the inappropriate attention that projects negativity, the strength of our attachment. The more attached we are to something, the angrier we get when we can't get it. And then contact with external factors. Yeah. But we can sit here and make ourselves angry even though nothing's happened. All we have to do is think of something in the past that we didn't like, or look at the clock and say, it's 1 minute past the time we're supposed to stop, and I'm hungry, and why are they keeping me here talking about anger and telling me I'm angry all the time? Yeah. So external situations, 1 minute late. You're going to be angry, or I want to finish the end of this section. So it'll take me a couple of more minutes. Get your anger ready. Okay. By understanding these causes and conditions for anger to arise, we can then begin to change them and thus tame our anger. So just as an apple seed needs other conditions, such as water, sunshine, and fertilizer, before it can grow into a tree, our seed of anger is nourished by other factors, such as our previous conditioning. There may be certain things at one time we had a bad experience in that situation, so now whenever we're with something that looks like that, or we're even with a person who looks like that person, yeah, we get triggered. Nothing's happened, but we make ourselves angry. Okay. So encountering objects that we find unpleasant trigger the anger. Thus, in the Buddha's view, anger does not arise from one factor alone, such as a negative childhood experience, but from a complex of factors, beginning with our ignorance that misconceives reality, and including other cooperative causes from the past and the present. A single traumatic event in our life may have made the seed of anger more easily activated, but it is not entirely responsible for it. If it were, why was Pelden Gyaltso not furious? Why was His Holiness's doctor not enraged and joining an army? If it's just the thing that happened to us, that couldn't happen. As will be seen in the following chapters, even this rudimentary understanding of dependent arising, in this case, how anger arises dependent on many factors, can interrupt our habit of trying to find the one cause of our anger to blame. And therefore, it helps us diffuse our anger. Because as soon as we see that there's many factors coming together, and then our response is anger, we also come to see that if you take just any of those factors away or modify them a little bit, we don't need to get furious. The anger won't arise. Yeah. It's a dependent arising. Yeah. So what we want to do, and what the book will further explain, is look especially at how we interpret events and then start to change that interpretation. Yeah, because we confuse the interpretation with the actual facts of what happened. Yeah, so sometimes just coming back to the facts, then we're left with, well, why in the world did I get angry at that? Yeah. Okay, so that's it. We got 3 pages. Yeah. So if you want to read ahead, the book is downstairs in the, what's it called, the Dharma items or Dharma books and room. We call it the book nook. Yeah.
Dharma and things, I think, is on the sign.
Dharma
and things.
Dharma and things.
Dharma books and things.
Dharma books and things. Things. Yeah. Yeah. Things. Okay, so let's dedicate the merit from thinking about this topic, and dedicate it so that we can overcome our anger, and so that all people can overcome their anger. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we think of people in government not being angry and working together? Wouldn't that be nice if they could get over their anger and do their job, which is to work for the benefit of the people in the country? Okay. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Thank you,
Okay.
Venerable.
Yes.
Everyone, please rise as Venerable leads.